Hello, my name's Dennis Hanwell. I'm the mayor for the city of Medina, and I'm pleased to present to you the 2020 State of the City to the Medina Chamber and the Medina Chamber members. Like many things today, it's virtual versus seeing you all in a room, which I feel sorry about. I'd like to greet each of you. I'd like to welcome you. I'd like to catch up with each of you. And we don't have that opportunity as a result of the COVID pandemic. But I thought and talked with Jacqueline at the Chamber, and we felt it best to set a good example, to do this virtually so as not to cause any undue negative criticism and still get the information out to everybody. So welcome, and we hope you enjoy the presentation. The theme this year is Our Medina. And Our Medina is really about everything that goes on in the city, including our response to the COVID, is all a team effort. Team within the city working with the Chamber, the city working with Main Street, the city working with our businesses, from retail businesses to the small shops on the square to the industry. And the more we can help and support one another in trying times like this just shows how special our Medina can be. So some examples of that are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of you had to make substantial changes to your businesses, to your industry, maybe checking temperatures, maybe requiring masks, maybe requiring gloves, people signing in or checking out, so you limit the number of folks in your individual establishments. And City Hall is no different. I didn't want to lock the doors of City Hall. I wanted to keep them open because we're so used to the public coming in and being able to greet them and be a welcoming public service. But the health department asked us to lock the doors and ask people to call so that we could individually then get them to the building department, get them to the finance, get them to utility signups, and control the number of people that we have within the building at a given time. Because obviously if 5 or 6 people are there to pay their bills, then it's our responsibility to make sure that they're socially distanced and not too many people in a confined area. So we had to lock the doors. We also, because our counters were too short, we couldn't stay 6 feet and still be able to hand the paperwork back and forth. So what we were required to do is then put plexiglass with a small window that folks could hand their permits in, hand their payments in, sign the cards for utilities, and get everything they need through the window without exposing either the residents or the customer or our employees. And that's important to all of us. We converted our building department to where everything was online now. They can actually file for their permits online, get them without coming into the building. They can do the payment online without ever having to come in the building. Even our utility sign up. We used to have them come in and sign a card that was similar to a postcard, and now we've changed that to where they can do that electronically and get their service signed up without physically coming into the building. And that's for like water bills, trash bills. Fire, LST, and police, as you've known from my presentations in the past, we're a very collaborative group. The police run on every medic call because A, they can get there faster, they can assess the situation, and they can also assist the medics once they get there instead of dispatching a second squad. But in light of the COVID-19 concerns, we have to be careful not to be exposing too many of our staff for a situation that is not necessarily life and death. For example, somebody not breathing, somebody without a heartbeat. So for those other like flu symptoms, like somebody nauseated, like a twisted ankle, a twisted knee, those type things, it was not necessary for the officers to still respond to, nor was it worth the risk of exposing firemen, policemen, and medics on each and every one of those calls. And the other thing the hospital asks us is if we're going to send the police and the fire into these calls with the medics when it's required, that they then put gowns on, they then put rubber gloves on, excuse me, so that slows the process just a hair because now we have to ensure that the LST unit is there because they have those supplies to provide to us. And we're going to talk about a local company here shortly that's helped with some of those gowns. I wanted to mention specifically local church support. The city has a great relationship with our local churches and our pastors on a variety of issues, and we've worked together well my entire time as mayor and the majority of my time as the police chief. So we had a situation, wasn't even a city resident. The person lived in a township north of the city, and their electric service was going to be shut off by Ohio Edison for lack of payment. The homeowner and their child were both under quarantine because of the COVID-19, couldn't leave the house, and she couldn't work. And as a result, they were going to shut the electric off, and Ohio Edison, much like the city did, they abated shutting off utilities for a period of time, but this lack of payment was several days before that rule come out, and as a result, I couldn't convince Ohio Edison to not fulfill their obligation to disconnect the utilities. So instead, I reached out to 4 of our local churches, and collectively, the Salvation Army and 3 churches, and collectively they put together, it was over $1,000, but each of them contributed $250, $300 to get to the number we needed to get to and save that electricity from being turned off. And it's just an example of how the city and the churches, when we see a need, we can work together on that. We've had others that have volunteered, other churches that have volunteered to pick up groceries for folks that are immune compromised, or folks that are elderly and don't want to go to the store, or maybe can't go to the store and pick up the groceries. So as a result, these churches, they call it in. This was a program put together by the Office of Older Adults. They call in their grocery list, they pay for it with a credit card, and then one of these volunteers goes, just simply gives the person's name, so they're not handling the credit card or any payment. They take the groceries, they take the receipt, and leave it at the front door, the front porch of the resident. So again, the volunteer is not exposed and the resident is not exposed. We had another situation where a person's lawnmower broke, and I was trying to solicit some funds to get the lawnmower fixed so that they could care for the lawn themselves. But the person at the home was pretty elderly, and a challenge for them to cut the grass, and they had a disabled son as well. And the church that volunteered, rather than pay for the mower repair, decided they would just take on the task of keeping up the yard work for the rest of the season for that individual. So we're just so thankful for that and what they do day in and day out. And last but not least, regarding the COVID, is our law department. Our law department, in addition to prosecuting and handling civil issues for the city of Medina, reviewing all contracts, but as you can imagine with the COVID, as you've seen, as well as I've seen, it seems like the rules and the regulations and the requirements keep changing and changing and changing. That's been a challenge for us too. And it's helpful to have a law department that can read through those things, give their interpretation, and give us advice and direction as to best meet those needs and handle those things both from the federal government and the state government. So the next thing I would like to talk about is responding to an emergency, and again, talk about teamwork. So like the COVID wasn't enough of an issue for us, the city of Medina was hit with a strong tornado on April 7th in the evening hours of this year. We had massive tree damage. We had numerous roads blocked. We had trees that had fallen into homes, sometimes structurally damaging them. sometimes nearly destroying them. We had some commercial buildings where the roof was literally torn off or damage to the roof, the air conditioner systems, the heating systems, all as a result of this tornado. So what we did as a city is we brought out our various departments, and I'll name them individually, but starting with forestry. So forestry can come out and start clearing roads for us if it's simply a tree laying across the road. What they can't do is assist us with the ones that are intertwined or laying against wires that may be live up in the utility lines, overhead utility lines. So with those, our service director would call the utility companies out. Our forestry department would be standing by, and as soon as they got the branches cleared from the power lines or from the utility lines, then our folks would take over and start removing that tree and those branches to work to get that road clear. And the utility company would go to the next one, followed by forestry, the next one, and we tried to get the state routes open first, then the more traveled of the residential streets, and then the less traveled in a very methodical and orderly manner. Our street department worked as well with the electric and cable companies. They set up barriers with barricades, with cones. If it was possible to keep one lane of traffic and direct it through one direction at a time, we would do that. Sometimes we had to close the entire road because it just wasn't safe for traffic to be in that proximity until, again, Ohio Edison and the forestry could clear the obstructions. The police and fire responded. Sometimes fire vehicles are very, very good when people are not obeying the barricades, and we need an actual structure, like a large fire truck, to keep them from coming through and putting themselves at risk and putting the safety forces at risk. They are also, through their inspections, able to help us with possible fire and electric damage and dangers as a result of that. And the police obviously helped us with the rerouting of traffic. We also brought out our sanitation department. We had a number of things removed from buildings, that were crushed. Maybe it's 2x4s from the roof structure. Maybe it's chunks of shingles. Maybe it's even furniture that got crushed in the home. So we started literally the night of the tornado trying to clear some of those things up. And by the way, we never got off schedule. Every day that we picked up residential trash or commercial trash, we stayed on our normal schedule. And then after all the trash was picked up, they would take a couple of those trucks back to the city garage, empty out any of the remaining trash to be loaded onto another truck, and literally hose out the inside of the truck to make sure there were no remnants of trash in it, and then use those clean garbage trucks to run around the city and pick up branches and things that could be compacted so that we didn't have to chip it and we could get more into it because of the compaction. And then when that truck was full, rather than take it to the CPF where most of the trash goes, because it was all vegetation, we could take it up to Smith Brothers at a cheaper price, and then they use it for mulch. The building department was very helpful as well in this regard because they have the expertise to take a look at the structures, the commercial building that the roof came off, the houses where the branches came through, and structurally, is it still safe to be inhabited? If it's not safe, is there something that could be done on a short-term basis to make it safe? Like covering it with a tarp, putting a couple beams in there to support it, or does the house simply have to be vacated until some necessary repairs have to be made? The other thing the building department did in the next days following and for the next couple of weeks was expediting permits so that contractors could get out there, get on the job right away instead of waiting for a permit, get started while the paperwork's being processed, and then we'd go out and do the necessary inspections and just keep the repairs going as quickly as we could. We also have warning systems in the city for storms such as this, tornado warning sirens. We put information on our website for people to scroll. And I just want to share, I had a couple calls that people were saying when they were in their house, they didn't hear the tornado sirens. Now, mind you, when the tornado came through, it was a lot of thunder and lightning, a lot of high wind. So there was some noise from that. But really the intention of the tornado sirens practically are when people are outside that you seek cover, not to notify you in the house that a tornado is coming. That's better if you have an app on your phone to do it. If you also have a weather radio, it will give you alerts for things like that. The next thing I would like to talk about related to this COVID, and it's good case in point, is the police having to respond to an emergency where we had a partial house collapse. So a tree had crashed through the roof of a house. This was just a little bit south of the intersection of Lafayette Road and South Court Street, and it did significant damage to the house. And the resident was pretty severely injured and was able to call 911 for assistance. And the officers went into the house and they're searching, found him. He had crawled because he was worried about the whole roof in the room he was in collapsing on top of him and crushing him. He crawled out to the foyer to where the officers could see him once they got into the main portion of the house. So he literally crawled out of the rubble with a broken back, a broken collarbone, and several breaks in his right leg. Broken back, broken collarbone, several breaks in his right leg. So the officers swept the rest of the house, and you'll see some of that on the video where they're checking the other rooms just to make sure that A, it's still safe for them to be where they are, and B, there aren't other victims that they aren't aware of yet. And it was so narrow and so confined where the subject was laying on the landing, as the video will show you, that they had to get a bifold closet door, double it up, and use it as a backboard to take him down the stairs and through the kitchen. And interestingly enough, as they were going through the kitchen, there's not audio on your video, but if you watched the video with the audio, the man that's injured is joking with the officers. He's in the process of remodeling his kitchen and was asking the officers, 3 of them, carrying him out on the closet door, what they thought of the remodel so far. The next thing I would like to talk about is unity in the community. And I mentioned our churches before, and this is just another example of working with pastors and pastors working together with the city and the community at large. So I was approached by Pastor Arthur Ruffin of Second Baptist Church in early June, and this is after the death of the black man that caused such outrage in our community. And he wanted to have a unity demonstration where the pastors and the community could come together peacefully, talk about some of the circumstances of that death, some of the circumstances of racism in our country, as well as have a march. And he didn't want a long march. He wanted a march around the square and around the parking deck and then back to the square. And then a couple prayers and some songs of unity. I attended along with 5 of our council members were present, a number of our county elected officials were present, a number of our state elected officials were present. And it was important for the city and the government leaders to partner with these pastors and show that we believe that Black Lives Matter, that all lives are important, and that we need to work together to understand, appreciate one another, and make Medina the community it is, inclusive and accepting of everybody. And we work hard on that day in and day out. but we need to continue to work on it. So we had our Unity March. We talked about police training and building relationships. The city of Medina has been doing community policing for over 2 decades. We started in the late 90s when I was the police chief, and it's continued on after I left there and came over to the mayor's office, and Chief Ed Kinney is doing a great job with that. The other thing that the Unity March led to was some virtual discussions, some conversations with pastors from Medina, pastors from Akron, pastors from Youngstown, and community leaders here to interchange, understand, explain processes, what happens in the criminal justice system. If you've never been there charged with an offense, how many jurors are in a municipal court versus the common pleas? What's the difference between a grand jury and a regular jury? What is the evidence level required in a civil case versus a criminal case? These are all legal things that law enforcement deals with on a regular basis, attorneys deal with on a regular basis, but the average citizen may not know these things. And sometimes there are a lot of misconceptions spread through the community, in particular minority communities, of how these systems may be set up detrimentally to them as a minority. And when they understand the process and how this is actually, many of these things are reviewed, juries, grand juries, by citizens, not just by police, not just by prosecutors, not just by judges, but actual citizens looking at the case data, looking at the case evidence, and making determinations on this. We also talked about some of the books that I've read and found helpful on diversity and inclusion, books that other people have read and now we're recommending to the community, just to have a broader perspective. Because if there's ignorance or lack of knowledge about it, it's easy sometimes to have misperceptions. But once we educate ourselves, once we understand what other people have experienced or gone through, even though we haven't seen it or we haven't witnessed it, that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. That doesn't mean that it may not still happen in some places. And by having that awareness gives us a perspective of how some others may look at that same situation. And last but not least, on unity, we feel we've really set a standard here in Medina, not only with our community policing, but the Chief Kinney put together a fairness in policing document that talks about probable cause and use of force and the body cameras we have on officers, cars inside the police car, cars outside the police car, cars all around the police department, inside the police department. And the whole idea is to have an independent set of eyes so that now it's not a person and the officer, one word versus another word. Now there's an independent view of what actually transpired. And at times people make false accusations. This happened, or the officer was rude, or the officer used foul language. And when the videos are checked, 99.9 times out of 100, that's not the case. That's not the case. And we invite the people in. It's not like we're hiding it. It's a public record. If you come in and look at the video, the story you are being told is simply not accurate. And Pastor Ruffin and I had a number of those conversations, and he was offered the chance to come in and review the videos and understood exactly what we were talking about. This fairness in policing document ended up down at Governor DeWine's office, and the person that's leading policing reform in the state of Ohio called the chief and I on a conference call to talk about it. And a lot of the reforms that people are proposing are exactly the things that we are doing and have been doing for decades here in Medina, like use of force reports, even if force is threatened and not used. And what I mean by that is if an officer pulls his taser and tells a person he's trying to arrest, they need to stop resisting, they need to put their hands behind their back, and they comply, that's still a use of force, because it was the showing of the taser that caused that compliance. That's important for us to know. The more data we have, we can take a look at and evaluate. Was it a proper use of force? Was the officer following the procedures and the policies that we have? And the sergeants regularly review that, and then the lieutenant in charge of each division reviews those of the sergeant, as well as random samples from the officers. Next, I would like to talk about rising above challenges in our community. And we have many examples of this. Just this year, 2020, was the first time we were able to host the Miss Wheelchair USA pageant up on our square. And they started on the square. We took photos. There was presentations from the city, from the county, the local Kiwanis and Rotary were both involved, and Medina TV. I thank you, because you were up there as well and taped it to share with everybody in our community these young ladies who entered the pageant, and the one was crowned Miss Wheelchair USA. This is a nationwide event. So after they were done on the square, they went out to Medina Creative Living Horse Ranch out on Lake Road there to see the horses and how people with disabilities are able to partake in the horse riding. There's a tree house that is handicap accessible, so those with disabilities can have the same activities as those without disabilities. Feeding Medina County has done a great job in our community for years and years, helping with the food insecure. We also have a number of foundations and community support. So we have a Miracle baseball field. It's one of the few in the country, and people with disabilities travel from a long ways away to play on this AstroTurf field that you can actually push a wheelchair around the bases. And they all bat. They use the wheelchairs. Some of them use walkers. Some of them use canes. And some of them don't need any of those. But again, the whole point of it is to give them the same opportunities that we're giving other youth or young adults. Well, the Willard Stevenson Foundation teamed up with the Miracle League to do not only redo the field, but then we did the playground to make playground equipment handicap accessible, and then we needed a restroom that could also be used by somebody in a wheelchair, and both of those organizations helped us out with that. And the Lions Club built a pavilion immediately next door, so that when there were these games and their activities, that they could have a place then to have either before the game or after the game some shade, a picnic, a cold drink, whatever. And it's served the city very well and shows, in my opinion, the city being inclusive to those with such challenges. A couple other points on that line. When I first took over as mayor, we had 2 of the 4 crosswalks on the square that were audible. So not only is it the walk, don't walk, but it's audible that it's safe to cross South Court Street, West Liberty Street. And I was contacted shortly into my first term by a group that represented and brought out van loads of folks to Medina Square that were visually impaired. And it was explained to me that you have 2 of the 4 corners, but not the other 2. And if we could get those other 2, then these individuals coming from Akron could go to more places and cross at more locations than just the 2 that we had originally. So as soon as we heard that, we made a note in our files to the next time the CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, come around, that we would set aside money to do those other two. And we got those done first. The next thing we did, because we saw the benefit of it up on our square and the activities of those who had some challenges being able to access our square, that we also decided to do the intersection at Northland Drive and North Court Street because of the Ann Tubbs estate immediately west of there that has a number of residents with disability. And then one block north of there at West Reagan, Reagan Parkway and North Court Street, because the Medina Creative Living is one block west of there. So all four intersections at Reagan and Court, all four at Northland and Court have the audible crosswalk signals as well, because the city cares about and wants to make safe crossing opportunities for those residents. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about the memorial pool. It was a challenge for us this year, and initially the city, both the administration and the council, had decided that with the COVID, we simply didn't think we could open up. And even if we could open up, that financially it would be detrimental to the city to do so. So I was doing a presentation to the Morning Kiwanis, and one of their members, Tom Bohr, asked me, did I think the city would be willing to open the pool if they could raise $20,000 in a week to help offset the loss. May not be enough to run it. We knew it wasn't going to be enough to run it, but at least it would be $20,000 less than it would have been. And this was probably in second, third week of June. I told Tom I couldn't speak for the council. I would have to ask them, but I felt that we would probably get the support if they could raise $20,000 in a week. And you know what? They did. In fact, they raised about $26,000 in a little more than a week. And well, now we have to get the pool ready. Council agreed to it unanimously. Council agreed to it, and now we got to get the pool ready because we weren't planning on getting it open. So it had to be filled. We had to get the chemicals. We had leveled. We had to get the pool heated. So now we're into the early part of July before we could get it open. But the fact of the matter is, we did get it open with this community help, and we have folks bringing their own chairs. We bring them in two different waves. We have a morning group and an afternoon group. And we have to limit how many can come, but so far we've not exceeded it, what our limitations are. We've been averaging about 52 per day. We've had almost 2,200 visitors as of August 16th was the last tally I got. And many of those that are using the pool and enjoying the pool don't have the opportunity to either to go on vacation, to go to the rec center, or anywhere else to try to get some of the summer enjoyment that you and I all enjoyed as children. And I just want to thank the community members, the individuals that donated, Deborah Halleck, who's the chair of the Friends of Memorial Park and Pool, Tom Bohr, for their efforts in doing the fundraising and making this a reality for our city. Next, I would like to talk about Medina Square Vitality. And we're going to talk about it both pre and post COVID-19, as you'll see as you watch the video. So the video will show you in pre-COVID some pictures of the Ice Festival. And you'll see crowds on the square in close proximity to one another. And you'll also see our school parking lots full. And then what you'll see in the post-COVID pictures is our farmers market with the farmers' tables and tents spatially separated from one another, with people wearing masks, with people keeping a social distance from one another, people sanitizing their hands. But the square vitality, the square is like the heartbeat of the city. And I've said this since day one in the mayor's office. We have worked very hard to keep the square vibrant. We have worked very hard to fill the stores in the square, in and around the square. And as the square goes, the rest of the city goes. Because if people come to visit the square, then they're going to stop at one of the businesses, or two or three, one of the restaurants, or two or three. They might stop at the drugstore and pick up something. They might stop at the grocery store and get some milk or eggs or whatever the case is. But the more people we can draw in particular outsiders from the city of Medina, just helps to elevate the economic viability and business base. And that's why the city regularly partners with Main Street Medina, with our economic development department, the businesses on the square getting together and having ladies' night out, having this Friday a special event, having a decorating contest, be it scarecrow or something for the fall, something for Christmas. The challenge for us really is having more and more events. And council has been very supportive of it, using city staff to help Main Street, because Main Street doesn't have a lot of employees, pull these things off. So with the Ice Festival, we use our staff to set up the blocks for the ice. For the Medina Festival, with a bunch of food trucks, we have to set up the cones, we have to set up the barricades, we have to have dumpsters up there so that massive amounts of trash can be placed somewhere safely and out of sight, and as this festival goes on for the entire day. We aren't going to be able to do that this year. We aren't going to be able to have some of those festivals, but we're going to have them again, and that square again is going to be packed. And I'd just like to thank the City Council for their support of everything that happens on the square and all that we're doing. And because of those activities on the square, let me just move from there into the new parking deck south of City Hall. So because of all of the activities on the square and all of our parking lots, at many of those being full, and then rolling over into residential streets, the city thought it would make good sense to apply for a capital grant from the state of Ohio a number of years ago. And the reason that the city got the grant for $1 million, a $1 million state capital grant, was because they recognized the importance of the historic downtown, the vitality of it, as well as everything that the city was doing on our own to keep things going there. So this was, again, a team approach, collaborative approach, with engineering, helping with reviewing the plans for the parking deck. Community planning did the grant application after council approved it. The building department structurally looking at it, looking at the entrances, looking at the parking spaces, how all of that would impact each other. The positive economic impact. Council not only permitted us to apply for the grant, but then later accept the grant. So how this is working is, we had $1 million from the state of Ohio, and it was about a $3.8 million project, is a $3.8 million project. So the city fronted the other $2.8 million. And the city established what's called a TIF district, and TIF stands for Tax Increment Financing. So the idea was for redevelopment that we're hoping to lead with this parking deck. One example is just east of the police department, where the old Chamber and Doors and Moores building was at the corner of West Friendship and Court. That building was taken down, and 3 new commercial spaces and 5 two-bedroom apartments were added there. That property, because the parking deck will provide parking as necessary for that business because of the proximity, the property taxes instead of normally being paid to the schools, the parks, the county, et cetera, will now come to the city. And as we continue to develop around this parking deck, those other parcels will do the same thing until the city is reimbursed the $2.8 million. So it's really just a deferral until the city is paid back, and then the schools, the parks, the county, everybody will reap the benefits of this increased development and increased property value that had we not done this, had we not got the grant for the deck, had we not created the TIF, then a lot of that change would not have taken place. There was no incentive for it to take place. So it was a novel approach, one that was very collaborative. The administration, the city council, our state legislators in pushing the state capital grant through for us, and it's going to serve Medina for many years to come. The next topic is maintaining our streets, and some of you may already know from previous states of the city, but if not, we, in my tenure as mayor, in working with the city council, we have literally replaced every industrial street in the city. And we added an extra lane out by Owens Corning, just a little bit east of Lake Road on West Smith, with another grant from the state of Ohio. And that was important to me as mayor because those industrial streets were very deplorable. And we have a certain percentage of our income tax that goes to streets every year, right in the area of, depending on the year, anywhere from $2.3 to $2.6 million. So we talked with the council because of this strong need to do these and do them in shorter order than the income tax would provide us, is if we bonded that over 20 years, and I've been mayor now, I'm finishing up my 11th year. If we bonded that over 20 years, then we could take that bond payment out, have the remainder, and it's a small portion of that 2.3 to 2.6, have the rest left for other projects, one of which we're going to talk about here. So every industrial street, and when we do streets, we replace every piece of infrastructure underneath it. Because what I don't want to do is spend all that money on a brand new street and a year from now have a water break or a storm sewer flaw or a sewer, a county sewer, well, it's a city sewer, but the county maintains them for us, under that street. So we replace every piece of infrastructure under there, and we know that we're going to get at least 30 years out of that. That's our plan, hopefully longer, because we put good drainage in, good base, et cetera. So the other thing we did, in addition to repaving all the streets, is we also extended Commerce Drive from Branch Road to Liberty Street. And if you're not familiar with that area, that's over where Sandwich Salads is and Drug Mart, Drug Mart's world headquarters. So what that permitted us to do, it used to be the trucks would come in on either 18 or 3 into our square. Well, then they would go south on Court Street and have to try to turn either right onto Smith or right onto Lafayette Road, which are difficult for those large commercial trucks. So by extending Commerce Drive out by the Career Center, where our weigh station is exactly where it is, the trucks can go straight across the north side of the square, turn left onto that, and access all of the industry on Commerce Drive, make a left on Smith, and access all the industry on Lake Road. The second thing we did to help with the truck traffic, as long as I'm talking about it, is we got approval from the state of Ohio, because it was outside of the city, to post Route 3 in Montville Township for northbound trucks that the Medina Industrial Zone, if they turned left on 162, was 4 miles, 5 miles down the road. What that did then is intercepted many of those trucks from ever coming up onto Court Street, onto Smith Road, onto 18, because if they get on Lake Road, again, they can just do the reverse of what I explained the first time. They can go up Lake all the way to Smith. If they need to turn left to get onto Commerce, they're right there and can access all of them and can either come back the same way they came. If they're going south, if they're going north, then they can go out 18 and take care of that. So this is a project, all of our streets are a project that involves engineering, our water department, community development, many times working with us to get the grants. City council obviously has to approve every one of the expenditures, the engineering, the design. These processes take a long time. I'm going to give you a case in point here in a second. But on the video, you're going to see a brick road being repaired, which is South Broadway Street. We're in the process of that right now as I'm speaking to you. They're laying the brick. And we got a $478,000 grant, which paid for 37% of that project. And South Broadway Street is one of two brick streets we have left in the city. That one on South Broadway from Grant to Lafayette, and the other one is outside of City Hall from Friendship. It's North Elmwood Street from Friendship to North Street. And that street had not been fully redone. It had been patched, it had been repaired, but it had not been fully redone, the brick, for 100 years. And as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, we try to get 30 years out of a concrete street, hopefully longer. But for a brick street to last 100 years, I don't think we can complain about that. And it's going to be very nice when it's done. It's new brick on the road itself. And we've learned quite a few things as far as drainage, as well as having a concrete base under the brick for support and to keep the bricks from moving. But the other thing is, instead of having all the bricks lined up across from each other where all the seams are in the same row and the tires with two-way traffic are hitting the same seams over and over again, the recommendation was, and the city accepted, putting them more at a 45-degree angle. And now you're not hitting the same seams all the time. You're hitting different places on the different bricks as you proceed down the road. And that is supposed to help with the wear as well. Another upcoming project, and this is the one where it's going to show you how much time sometimes some of these things take. So we've replaced West Smith Road from the city limits all the way up to Medina County Fairgrounds, or Standard Welding, just a little bit east of State Road. So we have a NOACA grant that is actually federal dollars that we just received and are in the process of designing and engineering to do West Smith Road now from North Court Street to where we left off at the fairgrounds. So that will literally mean that every inch of West Smith Road has been totally redone. And that project, it's being designed, it's being engineered, it will then be bid, and we don't expect it to start until somewhere near the end of 2022. So this is 2020, September. So think 24 months. That's how long sometimes these things take place to, in this case, even to start it. Before we get everything lined up, before we do the bid packets, we do the interviews, it's quite a long process. The next topic I would like to talk about is virtual communication. And every one of these that I'm going to list for you or talk briefly about were all assisted by Medina TV. And Medina TV has been a real asset for us, the city, for the county, for the schools. And you're going to hear as I give you these examples. Because through this COVID-19, so many of the things that we had to change simply would not have been possible without the help, the knowledge, and the expertise of the staff at Medina TV. So our city council meetings, we'll start there. We started the council meetings without any of the council members coming in. We did it remote on FaceTime, and each of the council members was either in their own respective offices, personal offices, or at home. and the department heads could do the same. They could come in virtually from home, or they could come in physically to City Hall, because most of us were still there working. But we ran the meetings that way, and also provided the public a method to have online comments, online questions, online suggestions live during the meeting, so that it could still be a public meeting, and they could still have their questions answered or their comment on the record without physically having to be there. So we did that with city council meetings, and then the Medina County Commissioners asked for our assistance because they saw what we were doing and did not have the capability at their location to do the same thing. And Medina TV, again, helped them with that and stayed for a number of their meetings to make sure there were no flaws or kinks in the system. Then we went on to the school board meetings and did the same thing. We had the board online from separate locations and provided the opportunity for online comments in real time. Then we had some issues with the school. Jim Shields and I, Councilman Jim Shields, who's also the HR director for Medina City Schools and a great resource for the city on HR matters, we always did a third grade program at the Rotunda. We would bring in every third grader, one class at a time, and we'd assign them to be council members, the police chief, the fire chief, the mayor, the judge, whatever, and have them work through some scenarios like they were running the city for that hour. And both of us felt very bad that we were not going to be able to have the third grade program because the children were at home and being virtually instructed. So again, Medina TV came to the rescue. They put together a program where Councilman Shields and I both taped then the same program we do at the Rotunda for them virtually and worked them through those same scenarios. Not quite the same as being there and seeing their smiling faces and their excitement, but nonetheless, we didn't want them to miss out on that. Medina TV helped us with videos for the COVID-19 safety instruction for both the rec center and the pool. Another big project they worked on, and I'm still questioning how they did it, but they had the commencement, a virtual commencement for the class of 2020. We didn't want our seniors to graduate from high school without having a commencement like you and I had. So what they did is they broke it up into time periods and into small groups, limited the number of visitors that could come with the individual seniors, let them walk across the stage on video, get their diplomas, get pictures with the school administration, get pictures with their family out front, and did as best we could to make their commencement as close as a regular commencement as they possibly could. And again, Miles, Jared, and Matt, I thank you both so much for that. And last but not least was the Cub Scouts had similar issues. The Cub Scouts are required to have so many programs a year, but with the COVID, they weren't allowed to get the troops or groups together to have these things. So they reached out to Medina TV. Medina TV was able to put together videos of virtual programs for them to provide the Cub Scouts to do at home safely and still meet the requirements then to get their different badges or credits or whatever the case may be. Next is economic development, and we always have a good deal of things to talk about and excitement with economic development. So one thing that the city did early on with this COVID-19 was we partnered with the county to develop small business grant programs. And small business grant programs were dollars that were brought in because of the COVID to help with rent and mortgage payments, utility payments, if they were having trouble meeting those, training dollars spent on furloughed or employees that were laid off as a direct result of COVID-19, COVID-19 testing costs, personal protection equipment purchases, cleaning supplies outside the normal course of business, In other words, you have to disinfect the doors more often, you have to disinfect the chairs, the countertops. Expenses to increase telework capabilities to enable employees to work from home. Any damages not covered by insurance. And last but not least, hazard pay or overtime pay. Medina City Council was always also very supportive of our businesses during the COVID. The first thing was council authorized $2,500 to Cups Cafe. And that was because we knew that more and more people were likely going to be food insecure because they weren't able to work during the early parts of this COVID. So the council approved $2,500 to Cups Cafe so that they could help provide more meals and more take-home lunches for some of the youth. Huntington Bank, our local Huntington Bank, saw that donation, and as a result, they contributed $5,000 as a match or a double match, if you will, to the city's contribution, because they felt as strongly about it as well, and that's how community-minded they were about it. Medina City Council next authorized $5,000, up to $5,000, to purchase boxes of 3-ply disposable masks to distribute to our small business community for public coming in and out of their establishments. So you think of a coffee shop or a cookie shop or a dessert shop or a sandwich shop. Some people may be coming in to eat, some may be just coming in and picking it up and leaving with it. So by providing these masks to them, in fact, we've even delivered to them. Because if you think about a couple of these businesses on the square, they may have an employee or two at the most, and it may not be physically possible for them to leave there without closing the business, which would defeat the purpose, and coming to City Hall to pick them up. So what we did is I took some, delivered them to businesses that had that issue. Jonathan Mandel from our Community Development Department did the same thing. Kimberly Marshall has done the same thing, and Barbara Deser from our Economic Development. And we're also checking with businesses as new businesses open, if anything else we can do to try to help them along. And I would just ask the viewers to please support your local businesses. Whether you eat in or you take it out and take it home, you buy it and take it out and eat on the square, enjoy our beautiful park. But these businesses are struggling because of the limitations of how many people they can have, as well as the reluctance of some people to come in and dine in. And anything we can do to help them survive this is going to make us better and stronger as we go on. Next, Team NEO and Jobs Ohio put together some personal protection equipment kits for distribution. And these are only for companies that have 100 or less employees. And we're in the process of distributing them now. So I wanted to share with you some of the conversions of our local businesses here to help with the COVID-19. So Spray Products has a plant on Lake Road, and they do aerosol into containers of various products. They converted one of their manufacturing lines to make hand sanitizer, both in a spray aerosol can as well as in a pour can. The city had to help them with the emergency use authorization process by reaching out to our federal legislators, which are Senator Portman, Senator Brown, and Congressman Anthony Gonzalez. And we helped them by reaching out to the federal legislators through the Food and Drug Administration process. They were approved within 30 days, federally approved by the FDA in 30 days. And I can tell you that is not the norm, but that's what happens when the business, the city, the federal legislators, and the federal agency all work together and get things done, because these things are needed out in the community. There were many times you couldn't find wipes, you couldn't find the sanitizer. So to have a company willing to provide them, we need to do everything we can to enable that to happen. We have a new company coming into town at the former Medina Plating building called Miller Plating. They're getting it just ramped up here now. It's going to create 35 new jobs and about 1.14 in payroll. We're very excited with Carlisle Brake and Friction. Some of you know from past states of the city that they closed their Oklahoma plant and brought all those jobs to Medina. They increased their Medina plant size and brought nearly 100 jobs here. While their corporate headquarters, and this is a worldwide company, Carlisle Brake and Friction, their corporate headquarters today is in Solon, Ohio, and they were so impressed with the processes of Medina and Medina's staff during the build of the factory to bring the Oklahoma operations here that they've decided to move the majority of their corporate headquarters to the city of Medina. So they're building an office structure, mezzanine out front between the existing plant and towards Lake Road. And this is going to create 40-time full-time positions, and an increase in payroll of approximately $5.5 million by the end of this year. And we're very thankful that Carlisle Brake and Friction continues to invest in Medina County. Vocal for Local campaign is something that the economic development directors of Wadsworth, Brunswick, Medina, and Bethany from the county all worked hard together on. And what it's designed to do is promote our local companies and help customers and consumers understand how they can shop and feel both safe and comfortable, and gave them a variety of options to do so. Firedex has their world headquarters at 780 Progress Drive, South Progress Drive, and they announced on April 9th that it had begun the production of Association for Advancement of Medical Instrumentation Level 3 compliant reusable washable isolation gowns. That was a lot. So the key word there is reusable isolation gowns. So as it had been, I told you earlier that our police and fire were having to gown up to assist LST. Well, you use those once and then they're discarded. These are able to be washed repeatedly and used over and over again for a period of time. So the cost is a little bit more at the onset, but you're not using them once and throwing them away. We're very proud of our parks and our city and our trees, and I just wanted to take a little time and talk about our forestry and the trees in our city. So for the past 38 years, the city of Medina has been a Tree City USA, and this is designated by the Arbor Day Foundation in cooperation with the U.S. Forest Service, the United States Department of Agriculture, and the National Association of State Foresters. So the city has over 13,500 street trees in the right-of-way that we're responsible for. So these are maintained by the city on a 5-year pruning cycle. So this year alone, they pruned almost 1,300 trees. They removed 66 trees that were dead, diseased, or dying, or had extensive storm damage, e.g. the tornado we talked about. They planted 176 trees as street tree replacements, as well as improvements at city parks, public properties, and the Spring Grove Cemetery. Then when we put these new trees in, they have to water them between June and September. So we had over 300 of those that were on a watering schedule. And every 5 years, all the trees are pruned. They're also fertilized when they're newly planted. And we've had a number, 700, almost 800 volunteer and community service hours dedicated to working on the trees in our city. On our finance graph, simply what I wanted to show you, it shows 2017 to 2020. And the top is the revenues, the bottom is the expenditures. And you can see that intentionally, this was conscious decision and planned by the administration and the city council, was to budget less in expenditure than revenue. Although we may have carry forward, we still try to keep that carry forward building for rainy days, like when COVID-19 hits. So you'll see that the 2020 is less than what it was in 2019, both the revenue projection and the revenue expenditures. And that was because we made cuts intentionally, knowing with people out of work, businesses not able to open, we're going to see the revenues go down, and we needed to see the expenses go down in line with it. And we're doing the same thing for 2021. We're cutting every budget in the city by 10% until we see where the revenue is going to be. Now, we've already committed to the department heads that if they, when we do that 10% cut, that we'll take a look between January and May, January and June, as soon as we have good enough numbers. And if the revenue projections are above what they were estimated, and that 10% can be returned, then it will be returned, because there were some significant cuts, some positions not being filled, some purchases not being made, and it was not my intent as the mayor or the council's intent to withhold those funds from them if they were available. It's just at this time we can't say where those funds are going to be. And last but not least, I have a picture here of my granddaughter, Madison, and her brother, Aiden, who is 9 months old. And I thought that would be a perfect point for any questions that any of you may have.